Alright, so these are the best settings for Call of Duty Warzone. So the only settings you need to change in general are your field of view and brightness. Field of view I recommend putting at 90 for the best experience. And then for brightness, you should always set this so that this is actually not visible. This is actually barely visible, so even that's a bit too high. Around, for me, it's around 52 mark where that's barely visible. And the reason you want to do this and not up the brightness fully is you'll find that your graphics is quite pixelated and blurry in game. So that's because your brightness is not set up. So in other games you used to set up your brightness and the game would be more visibly bright and whatnot, and it would look good. But in this game, if you do that, it just makes your game look blurry, and it's really awful. So that's the only really settings you need to change. Everything else is more preference and whatnot, but yeah, these are my settings. You can pause them and whatnot. But here's the nit-grit part. And for display mode, you want your display mode to be full screen. For streaming and whatnot, you want it to be borderless, because there's some problems with full screen right now within Streamlabs and OBS. There are ways around this, but for Streamlabs there isn't. So I run full screen borderless just for streaming, but while I'm playing games I run full screen because it gives a better FPS. For your display monitor, it's just whatever you use. For the display adapter, use your card. For screen refresh rate, normally this is changeable, but because I'm using full screen borderless, I can't show you this, but you normally just cap it at your screen refresh rate, which mine is 144. Your render resolution, normally what this would be is 1920 by 1080p for me, but because I'm in full borderless mode, it's showing me as this, but ignore this. Normally this would be, you set, so this number would be 1920 by 1080p, and then for advanced, yeah, as it's showing, it's 1920 by 1080p. So set it as 1920 by 1080p. Your aspect ratio says automatic, VSync disabled, custom frame rate. Normally I set this at 150. I would recommend just keeping it whatever your refresh rate of your monitor is. For your menu custom rate, put it at 60. So as you can see, it's always running at 60 frames per second, not making my PC overthrow or anything like that, because you don't really need the FPS while loading into the game. When you're out of focus, so when you alt tab or whatever, of course you don't want it to be throttling, so I run it at 30 frames per second because it's not needed. For NVIDIA highlights, I disable it. NVIDIA reflex low latency I enabled. Restart shaders installation, you do this whenever you think there's a bug problem, so it restarts the installations. For display gamma, 2.2 sRGB. Texture resolution, these are the main things that you really need to change. So I set these as normal, high. Bullet impact sprays, I keep this enabled. Doesn't really make a big difference between FPS, so I just keep it on. As test location, you always want this disabled. On demand texture stream mode enabled. Streaming quality, I keep this on normal. There's not a big difference, so I just keep it on normal. Shadow map resolution, this is optional, but there's not a big difference between high and normal, so I keep this on high. Cache spot shadows, I keep this disabled. Cache sun shadows, I keep this disabled. Particle lighting, I keep on high. There's not a big difference between high and normal, so I keep it on high. Ambient occlusion, always keep this disabled. Screen space reflection, keep this on low. Normally I keep depth of field disabled. If this gives you an option, just keep it as is. Filmic strength, I keep this on 1. World motion blur, always keep this on disabled, otherwise you're going to see that blurred effect here, and you really don't want that in gunfights. For film grain, I keep this as 0. Next thing is audio. For audio, I keep this on boost high to give the best effects for sound whoring and whatnot, hearing footsteps. All this is preference, but because I stream, this is the settings I use for sound. And yeah, this is basically self-explanatory. I normally don't use voice chat, so because I'm using Discord, so I keep this disabled, but if I were to use it, these are the settings I would use when they are enabled. And yeah, for controller, these are my settings that I use, but I am on PC, so it's kind of your choice really. But the main settings I would change in here, controller and mouse, is make sure that your automatic sprint is set to automatic tactical sprint, and that your use to reload behavior is consensual tap. What that does is when you pick up items, new guns and whatever, it will instantly pick them up when you press the swap button instead of holding it for 2 seconds. But in multiplayer you want to keep this disabled, and in multiplayer you want to keep this disabled as well, so that you don't automatically tactical sprint around corners and stuff, and that you don't just reload and pick up guns whenever you see one on the floor by accident.